on the gray page, what is the very first thing we always have to do, everyone? Go, least to greatest. What comes first?
1.
Then what?
2.
Then what?
2.
Then what?
3.
Then what?
3.
Next?
5.
Next?
7.
Next?
8.
Next?
9.
How many 8s are there?
2.
So there should be 2 8s. Make sure you have 2 8s, because if you forget an 8, that's going to mess everything else up. What comes after the second 8?
9.
Then what?
10.
Next?
12.
Next?
14.
Next?
15.
All right, that's your order. So notice, I wrote a number down, I crossed it off. Write one down, cross it off. Okay, everyone find the minimum, the maximum, and the median. Just those 3 numbers and stop there. Minimum, what's my minimum, everyone?
1.
What's my maximum?
15.
Okay, so that's the easy part, right, guys? Okay, median. What's the median?
7.5.
How did we get 7.5? We have 2 numbers in the middle, right, guys? So you have to add them up, divide by 2, or we just know that 7.5 is the middle point between 7 and 8, correct? Okay, now we have to get Q1 and Q3, but this is where students always make their mistakes on. Remember how up here we circled the median, right? I don't have a median here, do I? Where is my median? I need to draw a line directly down. I don't circle the 7. I don't circle the 8. My median is 7.5. Is that understood? Now we can find the Q1 and the Q3. Go. Okay, guys, what is the middle number of my lower set of numbers? 3, because if we have 3, this 3 is in the middle. What's the median of my upper set of numbers?
10.
If you were to add the 7 and 8 in, like circle them so you don't count those 7 and 8, we would not have gotten those answers, right, guys?
Yeah.
So it's very important to split between and count those 7 and 8, because the 7 and 8 are not part of the median. Find the IQR for me, please. Go. What is it, everyone? Questions? All right, now we need to draw our number line. What number should I start with? 0. We want to start with numbers that either count by tens or count by fives, right? So 1 is not an easy number to count by tens and by fives, so we start at 0. I count by tens always to start with. So if I count by tens, I'm going to go 0, 10, 20. Do I have to go higher than 20?
No.
So I'm going to put 10 halfway down the line and then 20 down the line. Then I'm going to cut both of them in half, and I'm going to have 5 and 15. Count by fives, count by tens. Then add your little tally marks in between where you need the tally marks. So plot your 5 points. Where do I plot the 7.5, you guys? Good. So when you count and you go 5, 6, 7, that's going to be between the 7 and the 8 tally. And then you will put a dot up above. Do we graph or plot the point of the interquartile range? No. So once you are done plotting your 5 points, you can grab whatever you used for a straight edge, whatever you need to draw your straight edge, and draw your box and your whiskers. And when you are done, yours should look very similar to mine. The only difference is going to be how you spaced out your numbers. If you spaced out your numbers differently than I did, it's going to look a little bit different. So let's go over this one. So here are the numbers. Everyone write these numbers either on your paper or on your table wherever you are doing this problem. What's the first thing we should be doing, everyone? So if you have not started ordering them, please order them from least to greatest for me. All right, guys, help me out. What comes first? Next. 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 After 11? Next. Everyone. Next. Thank you. Next. 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 You should have 2 16s. Make sure you have 2 16s. Next. And then ordering them from least to greatest is the most important step. If you forget a number, it is going to mess you up. So what's my minimum, everyone? What's the maximum? Everyone find the median, please. What did we get? Okay, everyone look up at the board, please. So when I do this, I always do 1 in front, 1 in back. And then I'm going in until I'm left with either 1 or 2. How many in this case am I left with?
2.
And because they're both the same, it makes it easy. My median is what?
12.
12. But when I have to break up into two different sets, do I circle both of them? What do I do? Put a line between them. If there is two, you always put a line between them. Never circle two. We only circle one, not two. Is that understood? Okay, find the Q1. What's my Q1, you guys? Because when I do this, I am left with this 9. And what about Q3? Find that one for me. What'd I get?
16.
Does that make sense, guys? So those of you that got it wrong on the bell work, are we understanding where we made our error? Okay. All right, obviously, we got to finish up some notes. We are not done yet. Okay, any questions about drawing, anything like that? Because now we're going to talk about how to read and answer questions based off a box and whisker plot. Okay, so everyone go to the next page in your notes. Whatever this color is, teal, turquoise, whatever you want to say. And go down to the bottom that talks about field hockey goals. You will be given a box and whisker plot, and you have to be able to answer questions that they ask you by just seeing the box and whisker plot and not having to draw it. So, for instance, if you see this and they ask you the question, what's the median? Who can tell me what the median is just by looking at this picture? Becca, what is it? 3. Everyone label that 3's the median. It doesn't matter what the rest of my numbers are. I know that the 3 is my median because it is my middle dot. Who can then tell me what the maximum is? Claire? 10. It is my biggest dot. It's the dot farthest to the right. It's the maximum number. Who can tell me what the minimum is? Lucio?
I can say 0.
0. Good. It's the smallest dot. It's the lowest one. It's the one farthest to the left, so it's my median. Who can tell me what Q1 is? Bennett? 1. It's the start of your box. It's your second point. That's your Q1. So then what's my Q3, everyone?
4.
So just by looking at a box and whisker plot, you should be able to tell me what every single one of those numbers are. So does that make sense? If I were to ask you for the range of this box and whisker plot, literally just looking at the box and whisker plot, I want to know the range. Who can tell me what the range is? Sophie?
10.
How'd you get 10?
10 minus 0.
Max is 10, minimum of 0, 10 minus 0 is 10. Does that make sense, guys? Now what if I asked you for the IQR? Interquartile range. How would I find interquartile range, Leah? I would do 4 minus 1 because it's Q3 minus Q1. As Leah said, that is 3. It's the range of your box. How big is your box? How far spread apart is your box? Does that make sense, guys? Any questions on that? All right, last thing that looks a little bit funky is, I'm going to flip back to this page, and I'm going to look at this bottom problem, kind of show it to you. When I look at this bottom problem, would you agree that the median splits your set of numbers in 2 sets? So that means that I have half my data over here and half my data over here. Does that make sense, guys? So that means that this is 50% of my data and this is 50% of my data. Does that make sense? Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah.
That means that from this first dot to the middle dot, that's 50% of my data. And from the middle dot to the maximum, that's 50% of my data. Does that make sense, everyone?
Yeah.
It does not matter if they look the same. Is that understood? Okay? For instance, this one back over here. From here to here, from the first dot to the middle dot, is 50% of my data. And from the middle dot to the last dot is 50% of my data. Because the median splits it so you have an equal number of numbers on each side. Does that make sense, everyone? Any questions on that? Okay, then, if I go back to this page, when I look at this lower half, I then split it up with another median, right? So would you say that when I split up my data based on another median, are these two datas equal in terms of the number in each? Well, if I take 50% of my data and I cut it in half, what's that going to be? So that means this is 25% of my data and this is 25% of my data. Does that make sense, guys? So same thing here with my upper set. I split it based on the median of the upper set. Did that give me an equal number on each side? So what's this percentage of my data? What's this percentage of my data? So that means that this whisker is 25% of my data. This first part of my box is 25% of my data. The second part of my box is 25% of my data, and the last whisker is 25% of my data. It doesn't matter how big or small, if they're equal or not, it is always 25% of your data because you're splitting it based on the medians. You're splitting everything in half. Does that make sense, guys? So if I flip back here, that means that this whisker is 25%. This box is 25%. This box is 25%. And this whisker is 25%. Always. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple questions for you. If that is true, what percentage is my box? 50. What percentage is my box to the maximum?
75.
What percent is my minimum to the end of the box?
75.
Does that make sense, guys?
Yes.
Any questions on that at all? All right, so now based on that, let's look at 1 through 4 on the teal page with the box and whisker plot above it. With your partner, describe the distribution. Distribution just means how spread apart things are, okay? Of the data. What can you say about the ages of U.S. vice presidents? So what I just taught you, give me one thing that you can say using this box and whisker plot about the ages of U.S. vice presidents. Tell your partner it, and then we'll give some examples as a class. Go. All right, so who wants to tell me what they said, you and your partner said for number 1? What do you think is one thing you can say? What do you think, Sophie?
25%
Okay, 25% of U.S. vice presidents are 60. I'd say maybe 72 or something like that. We don't know a legit number, so roughly estimate it. That's when, if you don't know for sure, you say about 72. Okay? Good. That's perfect. Morgan.
25% of vice presidents are about 36 to about 48.
Perfect. 36 to 48, 25% of U.S. vice presidents. Yes.
The average age for the U.S. Vice President is 52.
I cannot say that.
About 52.
Cannot say that. Does this graph tell you average?
Median.
It tells you median.
Oh.
So how could you reword that, Gavin, to make it correct?
Median age for president is about 52.
That would be perfect. So change the word average to median because we can't figure out the average, but we can figure out the median. Good. Bennett.
100% of vice presidents are roughly between 36 and 72.
Excellent. 100% of the vice presidents are between those two ages. Anyone else have anything else they'd like to share? Yes.
75% of the vice presidents have age of about 48 to about 72.
Excellent. 75% of U.S. vice presidents are roughly 48 to 72 years old. Lucille.
About 50% of vice presidents are about 48 to 60.
Perfect. 48 to 60 years old is about 50% of U.S. vice presidents. All of those would be accepted. Don't really care which one you write down, but write down one of them. Got it? Okay, answer number 2, 3, and 4 with your partner, and we'll go over the answers, please. Go. Okay, what percent of U.S. vice presidents were at least 60 years old when they took office, everyone?
25%.
Good. 25%, and hopefully you said why you know that answer. Whenever it says explain, make sure you explain. What percent of U.S. vice presidents were between the ages of 49 and 60 when they took office? 50%. Make sure you have an explanation of why. Can you determine from a box plot whether there are any U.S. vice presidents who took office at exactly 55 years old or not? No, and hopefully you explained why. Questions? Okay, do 5 and 6 with your partner, and then we'll go over the answers. All right. Someone tell me how they describe the distribution of data on number 5. Sophie. 25% scored 4 to 10 goals. What else? Ben and Kay.
The maximum amount of goals scored, or the maximum amount of goals they scored is 10.
Okay, that is a true statement. It just doesn't describe the distribution, meaning the spread. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you got to give me something that's a range. So true fact, just need a little bit more with it, okay? Bella.
50% have played 1 to 4 games.
We're not talking about games. This is goals.
Sorry, goals.
So what was it again?
50% have played 50% have scored 1 to 4 goals.
Not 1 to 4. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. 50% of kids, students scored 1 to 4 goals. Excellent. Gavin.
50% scored from 50% did not score more than 3 goals.
Okay, so 50% did not score more than 3 goals. Good. Anything else, guys? Last one. What percent of the team scored between 1 and 3 goals this season?
25%.
And then please make sure you have explained it. Questions on any of this?